Hello, everybody. Welcome to PowerShell Wednesdays. Every single Wednesday, we meet up, we learn about PowerShell, we hang out, we laugh together, we learn together, and we celebrate our love of PowerShell together. And I have the lead documentarian from the PowerShell team at Microsoft joining us today to teach us a little about PowerShell parameter binding. Sean Wheeler, welcome to PowerShell Wednesday.
Thanks for having me.
Parameter binding, can you give us like people, they know what parameters are, but binding, like what are we talking about here? Those are some fancy words that could go over our heads.
Yeah, it's how PowerShell decides what values get passed to which parameters when you run a command. And we'll get into the details in here in a minute, but
Okay.
that's basically it.
Sweet. Well, I'm looking forward to learning a little bit about this and maybe getting a refresher. It's one of those things where I think I know a thing or two, but I stand to learn the more details, the more subtle things. Selecting that screen. And next week, actually, Sean, we're going to be in the flesh, hanging out, Spice World, Austin, Texas, November 11th through the 14th or something like that. So if you're going to be there, come say hi.
Yep. I just got off a meeting with them and all the speakers right before this. So
nice.
Looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Are you sharing that screen?
Here we go.
Okay, there it goes. Perfect. Let's click a button and hope it works. Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous.
So I got a QR code here that takes you to the page that I'll be presenting from, so you can follow along on my website as we go through this and refer back to this later if you need to.
Boom.
So we'll get started. A brief overview of the command syntax. Hopefully everybody's familiar with this. When you do get help or get command dash syntax, it shows you the command with all of its parameters. And so you've got all these square brackets and angle brackets and all of that. And those have particular meanings. So if the parameter name is in square brackets, that means, but the value type is not, then it's a required parameter. You're required to pass a value, but it's positional, so you don't have to use the parameter name. If it's a parameter without any value type, then that's a switch parameter. So it's essentially false if you don't include it. It's true if you do include it, and so on. So you can see here what all of this stuff means, and hopefully everybody's all aware of this already. One minor difference when you run get help, and it shows you the syntax. Get help includes information like this, which is all the possible values for, in this case, the command type parameter. These are the values that are acceptable. You don't get that from the get command output. And then all the details are explained here. As you could see in the previous example here, we have two blobs of output showing the syntax here. Those are parameter sets. So to compare this to C#, that's like method overloads in C#. The parameter sets allow you to combine different parameters for different input to get potentially different output. You can only use one parameter set at a time. So part of the binding process is PowerShell trying to figure out which parameter set you're using. And there's a maximum of 32 parameter sets for any command. And there's only one command I know of that has all 32.
Which one was that? Is this the reason that there's 32, by the way?
I don't know if it's the reason or not, but it hit the limit, and that's where object. Yeah. And we'll see that here in great detail in a minute. So you can think of parameter binding as like you've got a form here and you're just filling in the values for the parameters that you see. And this, by the way, comes from the show commandlet. We'll take a quick look at that here in a moment. But essentially, that's what PowerShell is doing. So let me pull up my demo here, and I'm going to hit F5 to get this initialized. And we should be good. We'll come back to this, but let's look at that show command. So here's an example of the remove item command. And you can see we have two different parameter sets, and these are all the parameters that are available in each parameter set. The one with an asterisk is mandatory, and if you hover over, it tells you information about each of these. The cool thing about this is you can put in values here, and then if you copy that, I'm going to hit cancel. You can paste that into your command line, or there's a run button and it'll run it for you. But let's look at
Sean,
yeah.
Can I pause on that for a second? Because to me, that is definitely the best, most easy to understand way to see the different parameter sets and the required stuff without having to, I mean, that looks a little complex there, but still, I mean, if you're like more of a beginner and some of this is kind of over your head and you're trying to piece things together, I think that is an incredibly helpful way. And I'm honestly probably going to use it in the future to see sort of what's grouped together and find the differences between parameter sets. Because when it gets to be that long, my eyes don't always see the differences.
Right. And here is where object. It's the one command that has all 32. And so each one has a different set. You can see the thing that's different is what looks like the operator, right? So it's equal or not, or greater than or equal, and so on. And where is the one that's not? Even this is hard. So there's one, yes, the script block set is takes a filter script. So this is the one where you're piping to where object and you use the curly braces and put your expression in the curly braces. That's a script block that gets bound to the filter script parameter. If you don't use the curly braces, then it's using one of these other parameter sets based on whether you're using like -GE or dash, like or whatever. And these always require two parameters, the property parameter and the, I'll call this the comparison parameter. So you'll notice that in PowerShell, comparison operators are always lowercase. But when you're using it, let me do where object here. Where object foo-eq, if I hit tab, it completes it as uppercase, right? That's because it's actually a parameter, not a comparison operator, which is different than if I did foo-eq and hit tab.
Hey, Sean. Hello, everybody. This is PowerShell Wednesday. My friend Sean here is deep in thought. Um,
Okay, I'm back.
okay, are you back? All right.
Yeah, I've been having weird network things like that lately. Hopefully it doesn't happen too much.
I was ready. I was ready to jump in. So I'm glad you're back, though.
Okay, so that's enough of that. Let's go back to here. So that's parameter binding, parameter attributes. So there's parameter attributes that define how the parameter can accept values. You can always pass values on the command line, but there's different ways to get parameters bound in. So you can pass things on the pipeline by value, which is to say by type, or by name. So the input object coming down the pipeline has to have a property on it that is the same name as the parameter that it's going to bind to. And then there's a third option, value from remaining arguments. So this is a command line thing. So you could type in a bunch of values on the command line, not as an array, but just space delimited. And all of those values get bound to a single parameter at the end. And we'll see this in action here in a minute. So we can take a look at, for example, the path parameter. Whoops, I didn't want to run it. I wanted to do this, F8. So you can see the path parameter. There's information here about what type it is and what parameter sets it belongs to, but it's the attributes that we are interested in, and it shows us that it supports value by pipeline, value from pipeline by property name, but does not support from remaining arguments. Going back. So
hey, Sean, quick
yes.
question. Can we go back to that? Pull it up.
Sure.
Real quick. Okay, so I'm thinking on this. So this would help us if we are using commands and wondering how we can pipe things together or looking to get a bigger understanding. But also, if we're ever going to be writing functions that accept things, we're going to need to know about this as well.
Absolutely. This is, if you're trying to pipe something, you're trying to write a one-liner or whatever, you're writing the script and you're piping output from one command into another, and you're not getting what you expect, then I can show you how to troubleshoot it. But also, when you're designing your own functions and commandlets, you need to think about these things, and you can use the same troubleshooting tips to figure it out.
To walk through a quick little simple example of when we might run into this. So let's say I'm doing something with a computer name of some sort. I'm doing something to a device.
Yeah. I've got a demo for this coming up.
Okay, you got it? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We're good to go then. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
This stuff is so critical. Like this stuff is very important to understanding PowerShell.
Yeah, so and the trace command is what's going to help us with this. So the first thing that happens when PowerShell tries to bind values here is that it looks at the command line arguments and it binds those first. And so it's going to look at named parameters first, and then positional parameters, and then value from remaining arguments, if there are any. After it's done the command line binding, it does the pipeline binding. And so it tries to match by type first, and then by property name. And you can, within your function itself, you can actually see what parameters got bound using the automatic variable PS bound parameters. And we'll take a look at that. And there's an important thing to talk about switches if you're writing functions that use switches. There's a proper way to test the value. We'll come to that. But we're going to use the trace command to have PowerShell show us how things get bound. So let's go back to my demo script here, and I'm going to clear the screen and show you what I've got set up. So I've got this input object variable that I've created a custom object with 2 properties on it. And I've got 2 different functions here. Show binding 1, it has 3 parameters. It takes a number value from pipeline. It takes a computer name that's a 1 or more strings, and it gets that by property name. And then everything else on the command line gets bound to other args. And then what I have here in the process block is where all of the pipeline objects get processed. I output the information that got bound. So I'm getting the value of number that got passed in, the value of computer name that got passed in, and the value of other args that got passed in. And then also at the end, we're taking a look at PS bound parameters, so you can see what that looks like. So that's version 1 of the function. Version 2 is the same thing, but I added an alias to this parameter, and we're going to look at why that's important. But also, this number parameter before was by value only, so it would bind by type, but it now can also accept binding by property name. And so I've hit F5, and those got loaded into my session here. And so we're going to take a look and run some things. So using the trace command here, I'm telling to trace parameter binding, and it's going to run this expression. So I'm going to run show binding 1. I'm going to pass in some values on the command line, and it's going to output some information here that I chose for it to write out to the PowerShell host. So I'm going to select this, hit F8, and you can see our output. So let's look at what came out at the bottom. If you remember, I was outputting the values here as a custom object. So the number 4 got bound on the command line. My computer name got bound. And then I have a string. Well, actually, an array of strings, a single string, and a number. So you can see the values that got bound to other args, and it's an array, a string, and an integer. And here's the same information from PS bound parameters. So what was all of this noise that happened above it in yellow? So let me stretch this out a little bit so you can see it. And what the trace command does, it gives you all of this. So we can see where it's getting the value from the command line, and it got a 4, and it's coursing that into an integer. And you can see here that it bound the 4 to the parameter named number, and it was successful. And it bound computer name, a string to computer name, and that was successful. And then it does the positional bindings, and this is where it gets the values from remaining, and those get bound to other args, and it's successful. So we're all good here. Does that make sense?
I think so. So if I'm new to this and I've never seen this before, probably read through how the pipe, like your docs earlier, make sure that's solidified, then actually go through an example, and in your mind have an idea of how it should happen. And then you can read through this and actually confirm and see what the engine is really doing.
Right. Yeah, and this is, I mean, you can ignore all of this stuff at the beginning here, right? It's what's after the colon that's useful. And in fact, a lot of times what I'll do is I will grab the output here like this and go and create a new file. And paste it in here. I'm gonna
Control F it or something.
And then what I'll do is I'll multi-select and delete all that. And now it's a little more readable.
Smart.
So yeah, and so you're going to look for success to see what got bound. So let's look at another example. Yeah, go ahead.
It may be something you're going to cover later, but it might be beneficial to explain the differences between coercion and casting.
So casting is when you use a type in square brackets with a value, you are typecasting that value to that specific type.
It's like the PS custom object thing you did with
right
earlier. Okay.
Yeah. What coercion is when you pass a value to a parameter. You know, everything on the command line is just text, right? And so PowerShell has to read that text and look at the parameters, and it tries to coerce the value it received into the type for that parameter. If it can, then it will try to bind it. If it can't, then it can't bind to that parameter and it goes to the next. So coercion is like runtime typecasting.
Okay, so kind of like in your example where you did number 2. 2 is just text on screen. You didn't define it as an int at any point in time. It's not a variable with like the square bracket int or anything like that. So whenever you run it, PowerShell has to turn it into the int that is needed for the parameter.
Right.
Yeah, and it's something to be aware of in PowerShell that it is an engine that will try and help you. It will do more than maybe other different languages, which can be really helpful. But it's helpful to understand the engine itself and what it's going to be doing.
Yep. So let's look at another example here. This time I'm piping a number to the same command, and I'm just using positional values. And so I'll hit F8 and run that, and you can see that the 4 from the pipeline got assigned a number. There's nothing for computer name. And then everything else on the command line got bound to other args. So let's look at the results here, and we can see. So first we checked named args. There were none. We checked positional, and it's doing remaining arguments for other args, and it's binding all of that, and it's successful. Yeah, everything else, remaining args always works because that's the whole point of remaining args. It's going to get whatever. And then here, it's trying to bind computer name, and it got a null value for computer name, and that was successful. So that was the command line arguments. Now we're into the pipeline, and the pipeline received an integer, and the parameter named number can take integers, and so it's binding the 4 to number, and that was successful. And then we bail out. Any questions about that one?
So reading through your earlier slide, I mean, it looks like it's kind of demonstrating everything we talked about. Named parameters, positional, value from remaining,
Mm-hmm.
and matching values after that. Give it a second for the chat if they have any questions about this, because there are a lot of moving pieces here. It can be kind of confusing, so feel free to ask questions if there's some part we can clarify or dive into a little bit more. Can we look at the function real quick? Oh, we lost a guy.
I'm back.
Okay, he's back. Welcome. Okay.
Yeah.
I barely noticed you were gone. I was kind of ranting a little bit. Could we look at your function real quick? I think it could be helpful to look at like the parameters on
So
one of the
that's
show bindings.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, just looking at the params. And can you remind me why we have that process block? Why do we need that process block?
So when if you want to handle pipeline input, it's the process block where that happens. So everything that comes in on the pipeline goes through the process block. If you don't define a process block, if you don't define any blocks, then whatever code you put in your function gets assigned to the end block. And so it only runs once. But the process block runs for every item on the pipeline.
Yep. And that can be pretty frustrating if you don't know about it. You're writing a command, you're testing with one thing and it works perfectly fine. And then you go to use a full pipeline and it doesn't work so well. So I'm looking at those parameters that you're defining. So you're adding the attribute value from pipeline and all the three different ones that we know about.
Yep.
Right. And that's how you kind of define and tell the parameter how to do it. Makes it an advanced parameter. Looks like you're also defining a type on each parameter. Is that pretty common?
Yes. So if you want to be able to bind value from pipeline, but you're binding by type. So your parameter needs to have a specific type.
Yep.
Otherwise, its type is assumed to be PS object or system.object. And so that means any object will bind to it, not just a specific type of object.
And I think that line 21 and 22 are something that people are probably going to run into, some version of that in their times. Because there are some you'll find as you use modules, the property names can be pretty consistent. So it's not the worst thing in the world to rely on this. And I think a future demo you're going to show here pretty shortly will show some other cool things about this. But also I want to note that the array, if you want to accept a lot of things, you just make it like that, add a process block, and all of a sudden the commands that you're writing are able to scale. Just these small changes can add so much value.
Yeah, and actually, if I were to do this properly, what you would want to do is something like this. For each dollar comp and dollar computer name, and then this would be dollar comp. That way it will work from the command line or from the pipeline.
Yep. So if we gave if we did dash computer name and added a ton directly on this parameter, it would work. Or if we piped in a bunch of objects with a computer name parameter on it. Okay. Yeah. These are the details that really help you become an advanced PowerSheller who's able to not be confused and actually, proceed with writing some modules in the proper way. It's not as confusing as it can seem, and you're really showing us some tools and some ways to get some insight into what's happening.
Yeah, and Stephen Judd and I are going into this in great detail next week at Spice World.
Sweet.
All right, so let's go to our next example. What are we up to? That was, we piped 4. Oh, yeah, so I wanted to show you, again, remind you what, our input object looks like. It's got 2 properties on it. computer name and numprox, a string and an int. And so now let's trace that. Keep hitting F5. And so you can see number is 0, but what did I pass in? I passed in input object, and the number that was in input object was what? 8, right? So let's see what happened here. So first, well,
is this part of the demo, or are we troubleshooting live?
No, this is part of the demo.
Okay.
So I'm going to copy all that and go again to our, did I close it? Go here. Whoops. No. All right. Where is my scroll bar?
It's tiny and on the right.
Okay, there we go. So we're binding our command line arguments. We're getting our remaining arguments here, and you can see that computer name was bound from the command line. It was empty, and that we got a 0 bound from the command line for number. It was successful, but maybe not what you expected. And now let's look at the pipeline. And we got
Love is. It's what I got. Remember that. He'll be back here in a second, friends. He'll be back. I see where this is going. I'm excited. A little bit of a cliffhanger for you.
Sorry about that. I'm back.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
I'm grabbing this because it didn't grab it correctly. And why is this? All right. I love multi-select in VS Code.
Oh, it's wrapping.
It's wrapping. Let me try this again.
I've never seen the cursor loop around that way, to be honest. Didn't know it could do that.
All right. So here we are. So we finished processing our command line arguments. Now we're doing pipeline. And let me word wrap this so it's a little more readable. So we got a string, and it is really messed up the formatting. Let me go back to this view. Sorry about this. Okay, so here we are. We're getting our pipeline, and I try to look for successes. Oh, it is messed up in the output, so it's not writing the output correctly.
Wonder if it's VS Code issue rather than just PowerShell.
Yeah, I wonder. What we should see here is you'll see at the end, it finally shows that computer name equals circumflex. And there's this PS custom object value 8. At any rate, you can see the end result is my number didn't get, in my input object, didn't get bound here. So why didn't it get bound? That is what I'm trying to demonstrate. So if we go back and look at our function here, we're getting the value from the pipeline. So that's by type. And what was passed through the pipeline was not an integer. It was a custom object that had two properties on it. Now, one of the properties was named computer name. So computer name was able to be bound because we're doing by property name. But this value passing by type wasn't able to be bound because the input object was not an integer. So let's take a look again at the version 2 here. Now we're accepting input by type or by name, and I added an alias called numprox. So now this property name of numprox can be bound by name to my number parameter. So let's see this in action.
Sean, there was advice from somebody. They said maybe try piping it to outstring and then to clip or set clipboard. Might make it easier.
I'd have to capture the debug stream to do that.
Oh, the redirect kind of thing.
Yeah. So let's just try this again. So here we are. We're doing our command line arguments, and we're checking for mandatory parameters, and we can see that number here is getting the value 0 from the command line, and computer name is getting empty string from the command line. From the pipeline, we're getting this custom object, and that can't be bound because there's no matching type.
Yellow is a lovely color. It's better than red, you know. So, yeah, Gunner Bear. Say hello. I'm at Andrew Plotek on all socials, but Discord's a great one if you want to say what up. Also, discord.gg/PDQ to join the community there. Hey, welcome back, Sean.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, all good, man.
All right. So now we're looking at the computer name parameter, getting a value from the pipeline, and you can see that it's trying to bind circumflex to computer name, which is the right thing that we want, and it was successful right here. And now it's looking at number, trying to bind by property name. And you can see it's getting the value 8 and assigning that to number. And it's what it's not showing you that I wish it would is that the name that it matched was actually the alias name that I put on the parameter. So going back again to look at the function, we added this alias attribute to the number parameter. So you can use -number or -numprox. And now it can be
numprox. Kind of sounds like nunchucks, but it's not. It's numprox. Number of processes. I kind of need to be ready to be more on my toes for next time his camera goes out. It's kind of like a dance, but there's like a 45-second delay, you know, for the moves.
Okay.
Welcome back.
So any questions before I move on? So we've seen how we can bind by name. We saw how we bind by type, and we saw how we bind by remaining arguments.
Yep.
All right. Now, wouldn't it be nice if you could also troubleshoot how parameters get bound for native commands? Well, in PowerShell 5.1, that's not possible. So over here, I've got PowerShell 5.1. And if, for example, if we try to do a trace command on a native command, ping, what does that look like? Well, isn't that special? So the ping command worked, but we can't tell how the parameters were passed to the native command. So there's that's in 5.1. If we go back to PowerShell 7, starting in 7.3, we run the same command. We now get binding information, and you can see that we have command line arg localhost, command line arg -n, and command line arg 8. So this allows you to see how PowerShell parsed those values on the command line. And so if you're having trouble getting the right quotes around things to pass to your native commands, this helps you troubleshoot that. How can you do this in PowerShell 5.1? Well, I've written this EchoArgs utility. It's just a quick C# app, console app, that all it does is it writes out whatever parameters it receives. And so we can run EchoArgs. I'll run trace on it, and you can see the values. It got this and -p1 is -p2 a test and -- verbose, and then the output from EchoArgs is shown here. Each argument's on a separate line. So and with the angle brackets, you can see where it begins and ends. So if there's like leading spaces that are missing or whatever, if the quoting didn't work, you can see where the quoting failed more easily. And so that's what it looks like in PowerShell 7. If we run the same thing here in 5.1, oh, I'm not in.
I did post a link to this make echoargs.ps1 from your GitHub. It's in the chat if anyone wants to check it out.
Where am I? Oh, wrong. Sorry. All right, so let's run this again. Should be in this folder. Yep, so there it is. So again, trace command didn't give us any useful information, but echo args did. So basically, instead of running the command, the native command that you want to run, you run echo args with all of the same parameters that you would pass to the command you want to run, and you can see how it gets parsed.
And that can work with not just things that are in your path, like if you specify some random.exe or MSI that you're trying to deal with.
Right.
You could use this as well for that.
Yeah. And so just to show you what the code looks like for that, it's out there in my repository, but it just is embedded C# here. And so it's just iterating through the arguments that were received and writing them out. And this script has to be run in PowerShell 5.1 because you can't do this in 6 or higher. But when you do add type, you can output an assembly. And basically, that's compiling this C# code into an executable.
So very handy trick to know about. And if you're like super concerned about performance, you kind of need to know about that trick at times.
Yeah. So that's really it. So there's links here to documentation and the make echo arg script. And links to all kinds of other useful resources. And that's my demo.
Oh, Sean Wheeler, thank you so much, my friend. I think you covered a lot of really important stuff here. For, yes, using PowerShell, authoring PowerShell, even not authoring, like you're showing, native commands. A lot of times it's very helpful to wrap things, have some kind of wrapper with PowerShell, but you're ultimately calling some other kind of tool. You're just doing some decoration around the parameters. Being able to troubleshoot that, especially, it can get a little bit annoying as you're adding like quotes and stuff. So having some tools that you can go to troubleshoot that is awesome. Check out echo args. Sean, we covered a lot though. And it might, if it's new for you, it might have been a lot all at once. But if you break them into individual pieces, it's not as complex as it may seem. Watch this a couple times. Check out the awesome documentation. My big recommendation was actually play around, like you saw Sean actually calling commands, actually getting hands-on, checking out the parameters, seeing how things work. It's kind of really important. It's going to hold you back if you allow this to be a mystery forever. And maybe some things will work in PowerShell, but understanding that engine is going to be pivotal to getting the most out of the language. So, Sean, you took us behind the scenes.
Yep. Hopefully, folks learn stuff, and this is sort of like the magician, that masked magician that unveils the secrets to the magic that happens.
Yep.
This is the magic of PowerShell and how it really works.
Yep. And it's just a set of, code, kind of like one line after the other, ultimately, just like what we're trying to do with our things. When you kind of break it down step by step, it becomes a little bit more digestible. But if you just view it as just the whole engine at large, you need to understand everything all at once. It can be a little daunting. So I appreciate you giving us some insight into something that we are all using all the time if you're using any parameters everywhere. And yeah, I really liked using trace command. Also, I think show command to see the different parameter sets was another pretty awesome tip you snuck in there today. I gotta share a couple things from the Judster. He's making jokes out here. If you run test path home, type it to trace command, you can find your path back home. There you go. All right, running digital traces reminds me of my high school girlfriend, Trace E. Stephen Judd, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Anyways, you can join us every single Wednesday for PowerShell Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern. We're here. We're having fun. Wild that it's almost the end of the year. Been doing these every single week. So appreciative of people like Sean who join, share what they've learned. Appreciative of everyone out there who's actually learning along with us. And to be honest, it's kind of helpful for me to get a reminder on some of this stuff, because I definitely have never written anything that takes value from remaining arguments.
Yeah, it's kind of handy sometimes.
Yep. Flexible. I think knowing about that, you can make the UX of your module a little bit better depending on what you're dealing with. It's a cool kind of collect all. Well, Sean, links to everything will be in the show notes of this episode. Of this PowerShell Wednesday. They'll be in the show notes of this YouTube video. And I'll see you in person next week. And everybody out there, I'll catch you on the next one. Check out the PowerShell podcast every single Monday. Join us on the PDQ Discord, discord.gg/PDQ. We're always having fun and talking about PowerShell, just like today. You should join along and have some fun. Till next time, take care, everybody.